They say revenge is best served cold, but when I saw what she did to my car, I saw red. It wasn't just a car, it was the dream I fought for, bled for, and nearly died for. A matte black Lamborghini, the only thing I'd ever bought for me after years in the military. And there it was, sitting in my driveway, carved up like a battlefield casualty. My stomach turned. My hands shook. And I swear, for a moment, the Marine in me almost came back to life. But I wasn't in a war zone anymore. This time, the enemy wasn't carrying a gun, she was carrying a clipboard. The HOA president, Linda, the woman who thought rules gave her power. She had no idea who she was picking a fight with. And I'll tell you right now, this story doesn't end how she thought it would. What would you do if someone destroyed your car out of pure jealousy? It all started about 6 months after I moved into my new home, a quiet, gated community tucked just outside of town. I'd bought it because it promised peace. After years of explosions, orders, and sleepless nights overseas, I wanted silence. I wanted a place where I could breathe. The first few weeks were fine. Neighbors waved, kids rode bikes down the street, and every night I'd sit on my porch with a cup of coffee watching the sunset melt over the horizon. I felt normal again. Then I met her. Linda, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood. She introduced herself with that tight smile only Karens have, the kind that doesn't reach their eyes. "I'm Linda, HOA president. Welcome to our community. We have standards here." Standards. She said it like a threat, not a greeting. At first, I brushed it off. She complained about my trash cans being visible from the street, then about my grass being slightly overgrown. It was nonsense, but I didn't care enough to argue. I just wanted peace. That changed the day I brought home my dream, the Lamborghini. It wasn't loud or obnoxious. I didn't rev the engine or show off. I parked it neatly in my driveway, admired it for a minute, and went inside. But the next morning, there was a note taped to my door. "This type of vehicle does not reflect the community image. Please remove it from sight immediately." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But then she showed up, clipboard in hand, hands on her hips, eyes narrow like she was staring down a criminal. "That car needs to go. It doesn't fit the HOA guidelines." I asked calmly, "Show me the rule that says that." She stammered, flipping through her papers. "It's implied. This is a family neighborhood, not a racetrack." I told her politely that it was my property, my car, and fully compliant with every written rule. Then I walked back inside. That was the day I made my first mistake. I underestimated how far her ego would go. Over the next few weeks, she ramped it up. Anonymous complaints started arriving. HOA violation notices, fines, warnings, all signed by her. I could feel her eyes on me whenever I drove in or out, but I refused to bend. I dealt with worse under enemy fire. Then came that morning. It was early, around 6 a.m. I stepped outside with my coffee and froze. The Lamborghini glistened under the sunrise, but not the way it should have. Deep white scratches cut across the doors, the hood, even the rear spoiler. Someone had keyed every inch of it. My throat went dry. I walked closer and saw what looked like the word "show off" scratched into the paint. I felt something inside me snap. All those years of staying calm, staying collected, I could feel my pulse pounding like I was back in combat. I took a breath, steadied myself, and went straight for my security cameras. I rewound the footage, and there she was, Linda, in her pink jogging suit, walking right up to my car in the middle of the night. She looked around once, then dragged her key across the paint. Slowly. Deliberately. Smiling, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but fury. I didn't call the police immediately. I wanted to see how far she'd go. I wanted to hear what she'd say when I gave her the chance to come clean. That afternoon, as if on cue, she came walking down the street with her clipboard again. Same smug grin. "Still haven't moved that car?" she asked, looking it over. I stared right at her. "Interesting you bring that up, Linda. Someone vandalized it last night." She raised her eyebrows. "Oh. That's unfortunate. Maybe that's a sign you should keep it in your garage." She said it with a smirk, like she was proud of herself. I stepped closer. My voice dropped. "You sure you don't know anything about it?" Her expression faltered for half a second, just long enough for me to know the truth. "Of course not," she said, forcing a laugh. "I'd never do something like that." I smiled, calm, controlled. "Good," I said, "because I've got the whole thing on camera." Her face turned white. She froze. Didn't say a word, then turned and stormed off. That night she sent an HOA-wide email claiming I'd threatened her, tried to paint me as some kind of unstable veteran. That was her biggest mistake, because if she wanted a war, she just started one. And I never lose wars. What would you do if someone destroyed something you worked your whole life for, then tried to play the victim? Because for me, that was the moment I decided she wasn't going to win this. Not this time. After that night, something in me shifted. It wasn't just about the car anymore, it was about principle. I'd fought for my peace, earned every inch of it, and now this woman thought she could trample all over it because of a title printed on a clipboard. I spent the rest of that evening going through the footage again, frame by frame. Every angle, every movement. I made copies of it, sent one to my lawyer, another to my cloud backup. I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this. Next morning, I woke up to chaos. The neighborhood Facebook group was blowing up. Linda had posted a long, dramatic message calling me aggressive, dangerous, and even claimed I had threatened her life. Reading that, it made my blood boil. She wasn't just trying to save herself, she was trying to destroy my reputation. So I did what any calm, disciplined Marine would do. I documented everything, emails, texts, HOA notices, every passive-aggressive message she'd sent since I moved in. My lawyer told me to sit tight and not confront her again until the police reviewed the footage. But I wasn't built for waiting. That afternoon, I walked out to my driveway to check on the car again. The scratches looked even worse in daylight, deep scars cutting through that perfect black finish. As I stood there, I saw her walking toward me from across the street, phone in hand, fake smile plastered on her face. "Good afternoon," she said sweetly. "I just wanted to check if you filed an insurance claim yet. You know, it might be tricky since your vehicle is rather flashy." I clenched my jaw. "You really want to talk about insurance right now, Linda? I'm just trying to help. We don't want this kind of thing escalating. Maybe if you parked something more modest, people wouldn't feel so." I cut her off. "So what? Jealous, entitled, angry that someone else has something they do?" Her mask cracked for a moment and she snapped. "This isn't about jealousy. This is about maintaining standards. You can't just park a sports car here like it's a trophy." That was it. I laughed, low and cold. "You know what's funny? You talk about standards, but you're the one caught on camera vandalizing my property." Her face drained of color. "Why, you're bluffing." I turned, pointed at the security camera on my garage, its little red light blinking steadily. "Go ahead, keep lying." For a second, she froze. Then she turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath, "You'll regret this." I didn't, but she would. 2 hours later, there was a knock on my door. 2 uniformed officers stood there, serious but polite. One of them said, "Sir, we received a complaint from your HOA president that you've been harassing her." I actually laughed. "Oh, you're going to love this." I invited them inside, offered them a seat, and played the footage. Linda, under the glow of my driveway light, dragging her key down the side of my Lamborghini not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. The officers exchanged glances. One of them shook his head. "Sir, we'll be filing a report. This is felony vandalism, given the value of the damage." They took copies of the footage, my statements, and left. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of relief. But Linda wasn't done. The next morning, she was outside again, pacing in front of my house with 2 HOA board members, whispering like kids gossiping in a school hallway. One of them, a man named Dave, walked up to me cautiously. "Hey, we heard there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe we can resolve this without the police?" I smiled politely. "Dave, there's no misunderstanding. Linda vandalized my car. It's on video. The police have it." He blinked. "Oh, she didn't mention that." "Yeah," I said. "Funny how she leaves out details." When they walked away, I saw her glare at me over her shoulder, that venomous, hateful look of someone who realizes they've lost control. Later that night, as I sat inside trying to unwind, I saw flashing lights outside my window. Police cruisers. My heart skipped. For a second, I thought maybe she'd done something else. But when I stepped outside, it was even better. They were at her house. 2 officers stood at her door while another knocked. I watched from my porch as she opened it, confused and trembling. Within minutes, she was in handcuffs. She shouted, "This is harassment. He's making this up. I'm the HOA president." One of the officers replied calmly, "Ma'am, we've seen the footage." Her voice broke. She looked across the street at me, eyes full of fury, disbelief, and something else. Fear. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching the lights flicker across her face as they put her in the back of the cruiser. That night, the neighborhood was silent. No kids outside, no porch lights on, just whispers behind curtains and the distant echo of police radios. The next morning, I got a call from the detective assigned to the case. They confirmed she'd been charged with felony property damage, and that restitution would be discussed once the car's repair estimate came in. When I hung up, I just sat there staring at the car, my car, scarred and battered, but still standing. And in a strange way, I saw myself in it. Scratched, tested, but not broken. You know, I've seen war, I've lost friends, I've faced real enemies, but I never thought peace would be this hard to protect. I didn't want revenge anymore, I just wanted justice. Still, part of me couldn't help but wonder what made her hate me so much. Was it really just about the car, or was there something deeper, something personal she saw in me that made her lash out? Maybe it didn't matter, because soon she'd have to face a courtroom, not a cul-de-sac. And that's where things really got interesting. So tell me, what would you do if the same neighbor who vandalized your car tried to get you arrested for it? Would you stay calm, or would you make sure they never forgot who they messed with? The days after her arrest were quiet, almost too quiet. The neighborhood that once buzzed with weekend chatter suddenly felt frozen. Curtains stayed drawn, doors stayed shut, and the same people who used to wave at me now just watched from behind their blinds. Word had spread fast, the HOA president had been arrested. I won't lie, part of me felt vindicated. I'd finally stood up to someone who thought she could bully her way through life. But another part of me, it just felt tired. I wasn't built for petty wars. I wanted to move on. Then the letters started showing up. Anonymous, typed, slipped into my mailbox. You should be ashamed. Veterans shouldn't act like bullies. You're ruining our community's reputation. One of them even said, we know you're dangerous. People like you don't belong here. That last one hit different, not because it scared me, but because it reminded me exactly why I left the military. Some battles never end, they just change shape. My lawyer told me the case was moving fast. Linda's attorney had already reached out, trying to negotiate. They wanted me to drop the charges in exchange for a written apology and minor restitution. I didn't even let him finish reading the email. Absolutely not, I said. We go all the way. He nodded, smiled slightly. I thought you'd say that. The trial date was set for a month later. In the meantime, my car was at the body shop. Every time I visited, I felt that ache in my chest, the one that comes when something precious to you gets broken, even if it can be fixed. The mechanic showed me the bills, $42,000 in damage. $42,000. Because one woman couldn't stand seeing someone else happy. And that's when it hit me this wasn't about rules or cars or community standards. It was about control. She hated not having it. A week before the court date, I ran into her husband, Tom, at the grocery store. I'd never spoken to him before. He looked exhausted, eyes hollow. He approached me slowly, almost apologetically. I just wanted to say sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know she'd gone that far. She's been different lately. I nodded. You don't have to apologize for her, he sighed. You don't understand. She's obsessed with this HOA stuff. It's like power gives her purpose. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. But I knew sympathy wouldn't fix what she'd done. When the court day finally came, I put on a clean suit, polished my shoes, and walked in with the same calm I had walking into missions years ago. The difference was, this time, I wasn't carrying a weapon, just truth. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, cold, sterile. Linda sat at the defense table, pale and trembling, wearing that same floral blouse she used to patrol the neighborhood in. Her lawyer whispered frantically to her, but she wouldn't look up. Not at me, not at anyone. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The air felt thick. My lawyer went first. He played the footage, high definition, time-stamped, crystal clear. The room was silent except for the sound of her key scratching across the Lamborghini's surface. That horrible screech echoed off the walls. Linda flinched in her seat. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Then came her defense. Her lawyer argued she'd been emotionally provoked, that my intimidating presence and military background made her feel unsafe and that she acted out of stress. The room went quiet again. You could almost hear people rolling their eyes. I stood when called, hands clasped behind my back, voice steady. Your Honor, I said, I served this country for 15 years. I've been shot at, I've lost brothers, and I came back here hoping for peace. The only thing I've ever intimidated anyone with is self-control. I turned to look at her, not with anger, but with disappointment. She didn't act out of fear, she acted out of hate, and that hate cost me thousands of dollars and months of peace. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Linda tried to speak then, trembling, fake tears rolling down her face. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood respectable. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But the judge wasn't buying it. You keyed a $300,000 car 3 times, Mrs. Shaw. That's not an accident, that's intent. When the gavel hit the desk, it was like thunder. Guilty. Ordered to pay full restitution, plus community service and a permanent removal from the HOA board. She covered her face and started to cry. I just sat there, silent. No satisfaction, no triumph, just closure. As I walked out of that courtroom, the sun hit my face through the glass doors. I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt light. But as I stepped into the parking lot, I noticed something strange, a small crowd from the neighborhood waiting outside. People I hadn't talked to in weeks. One woman, Mrs. Allen, approached me first. We saw the footage. We're so sorry for how we treated you. None of us knew she'd gone that far. Another neighbor nodded. She bullied everyone. You just happened to be the one who stood up. I smiled faintly. Sometimes you've got to stand up once so others don't have to. They nodded, some even clapped my shoulder as I walked past, and for a moment I realized maybe all this chaos had done something good. It woke people up. It reminded them that silence helps the bully, not the victim. That night I sat back on my porch again. Same chair, same cup of coffee, same sunset. Except now it felt like mine again. You know, life has a funny way of testing your peace. Sometimes it's war zones, sometimes it's HOA meetings. But no matter the battlefield, the principle's the same, stand your ground with integrity. And as I looked out at that repaired Lamborghini gleaming in the driveway, I whispered to myself, I didn't fight for a country just to surrender to a Karen. So, what would you do if someone like that tried to destroy your peace? Would you fight back or walk away and let karma do the work? Because for me, justice wasn't revenge, it was redemption. You'd think after the courtroom it would all be over. The judge's gavel came down, she was found guilty, and I finally had what I wanted, justice. But peace doesn't always return so easily, especially not when pride and humiliation are involved. The first week after the trial, the entire neighborhood seemed to breathe again. No more nasty emails, no more unannounced inspections, no more Linda marching around like she ran a dictatorship with a clipboard. For the first time since moving in, I felt the quiet I'd dreamed of. But silence has its own kind of danger. It hides whispers. One evening, I was sitting out front with my dog, Max, a big German shepherd I'd rescued after deployment, when Dave, one of the HOA board members, stopped by. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might be watching. "Hey, man," he said quietly. "You didn't hear this from me. But Linda's been going around telling people you set her up." I blinked. "Set her up how?" He shrugged, uneasy. "She's saying you doctored the footage, that you manipulated the system to make her look guilty. Some folks actually believe it." I sighed, shaking my head. "Of course she is. She lost, so now she's rewriting the story." Dave nodded. "Yeah, but it's getting messy. Her husband left her and she's been drinking. People say she's unstable." I looked past him across the quiet street at the house that used to be her throne. Curtains drawn, lights off. A for sale sign leaning half-broken in her yard. I wanted to feel pity, but all I could feel was exhaustion. That night I sat on my porch thinking about how fragile peace really is. You can fight for it, earn it, even win it, but one bitter person can still poison the air. The next few days, strange things started happening. My mail went missing. Trash appeared on my lawn. One morning I found a nail jammed into one of my tires, small enough to look like an accident, but deep enough to know it was. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I just made sure my cameras were always rolling. A few nights later, around midnight, I was half asleep when Max started growling low, that deep, guttural warning that something wasn't right. I grabbed a flashlight and slipped outside quietly. There, by the edge of my driveway, I saw movement. A shadowy figure crouched near my car. My stomach clenched. "Hey!" I barked, voice sharp, commanding, the kind of tone that used to stop soldiers mid-step. The figure froze, then bolted toward the street. I sprinted after them, years of training kicking in instinctively, but they were fast, too fast. All I caught was the flash of a floral sleeve disappearing into the dark. Linda. I checked the footage the next morning. Sure enough, there she was again, creeping onto my property, this time holding a can of spray paint. She dropped it when she ran, bright red, probably planned to paint liar across my garage. I sent the footage to the detective. He called me the next day, half laughing, half frustrated. "She's lucky you didn't catch her," he said. "We'll issue a restraining order this time. She's clearly not learning." I didn't respond right away, because deep down I wasn't angry anymore, just sad. Sad that someone could let hatred eat them alive like that. A week later, a moving truck showed up outside her house. No goodbyes, no apologies, no second chances. She packed what was left of her life into cardboard boxes and disappeared. The neighborhood felt different after that. Lighter. The tension that once hung in the air like fog started to lift. But here's the thing about standing up to a bully people remember. A few weeks later, the HOA called for a special meeting. I almost didn't go, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived, every seat was filled. The new HOA president, a calm, middle-aged woman named Karen Bennett, ironically, a good Karen, stood up to speak. "We've decided to make some changes," she announced. "From now on, homeowners will have more say in community rules, no more power trips, no more intimidation." Everyone clapped. Some even turned to me, smiling. Mrs. Allen, the same neighbor who once ignored me, whispered, "You did this. You made it better." I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't looking for thanks. I just wanted to live without being treated like the enemy in my own home. After the meeting, as people filtered out, I stayed behind, staring at the old HOA bulletin board. It was filled with notices, flyers, and one faded picture, the old HOA committee photo. Linda in the center, arms crossed, smiling like she owned the world. I tore it down, quietly, slowly, folded it in half, and dropped it into the trash. The next morning, I got a letter in my mailbox, no stamp, no return address. Inside, a single sentence typed on plain white paper. "You may have won this time, soldier, but peace never lasts." No signature, but I didn't need one. Was it her? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it didn't matter, because I realized something then. Peace isn't about living without conflict. It's about learning to stay calm through it. I went to my garage, ran my hand along the freshly repaired body of my Lamborghini. Smooth, flawless, like nothing ever happened. But I knew better. I knew every scar that had been polished away. And as I stood there, the light catching on the sleek black paint, I thought about everything I'd been through, not just with her, but in life. The battles, the noise, the sleepless nights. And how sometimes the biggest wars happen not on foreign soil, but right at home. Max brushed against my leg, his tail wagging. I smiled, scratched his head, and whispered, "We made it, buddy. No more wars, not here." He looked up at me, eyes bright and loyal, like he understood. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove. Not fast, just far enough to feel free again. The road stretched out ahead of me, golden in the sunset. My reflection flickered across the windshield, calm, steady, and whole again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. So tell me, if peace meant standing your ground, even when everyone else turned away, would you still fight for it? Because I did. And I'd do it again every single time. For a while I thought that was the end. Linda was gone, the HOA had reformed, and the neighborhood was finally calm again. For the first time in a long time, mornings actually felt peaceful. Birds instead of shouting, laughter instead of glares. But peace has a funny way of testing you when you least expect it. It had been about 3 months since her move. The Lamborghini was spotless again, its engine humming like new. Life had gone back to normal until one chilly Saturday morning when I got a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found a young man standing there. Early 20s, messy hair, nervous eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Hi, are you Mr. Carter?" "Yeah," I said slowly. "Who's asking?" I'm Ryan, Linda's son." For a second, I didn't know what to say. His voice wasn't rude or defensive, just tired, defeated. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing down. "I know I probably shouldn't be here, but I needed to talk to you. My mom, she's not okay." I stayed silent. He kept going. "After the court thing, she lost her job and then Dad left. She's been drinking a lot. She keeps saying you ruined her life. I tried to get her to move on, but she won't stop talking about you like you're her enemy." I let out a slow breath. "Son, I didn't ruin her life. She did that herself." He nodded, eyes wet. "I know, I guess I wanted to say sorry for everything she did." For a moment, the soldier in me softened. This wasn't the enemy. This was collateral damage, a kid paying for his mother's war. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't owe me an apology, son. Just take care of her. Make sure she gets help." He nodded again, tears brimming, and left. When I closed the door, I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty street. For the first time since all this began, I didn't feel angry, just sad. Sad that one person's pride could destroy so much. But life moved on, or so I thought. 2 weeks later, strange things started happening again. Late-night phone calls, no one speaking on the other end. I'd answer and the line would stay silent for several seconds before disconnecting. Then came the note, slipped under my door. Same typewriter-style text as before. "You think you've won, but peace is just the calm before the next storm." My stomach dropped. I immediately checked the cameras, but there was nothing. Whoever left it had timed it perfectly between motion triggers. The next day, I drove down to the local precinct and showed the detective the note. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "We can't prove it's her, but we'll increase patrols in your area for a bit. Maybe she's just trying to rattle you." I wanted to believe that. But something in my gut said otherwise. That night, I double-checked all my locks and took Max out for one last walk before bed. The street was quiet, too quiet. Halfway down the block, Max's ears perked up, his growl low and steady. I turned just in time to see headlights flicker at the end of the road. A dark SUV idled there for a moment. Then, slowly, it drove away. I didn't sleep much that night. A few days later, I was in the garage cleaning up when my neighbor, Mrs. Allen, came rushing over. Her face was pale, hands trembling. "Did you hear about Linda?" I froze. "What about her?" She got arrested again. She was found trespassing outside another HOA member's house, said she was collecting evidence of corruption. They said she had photos, documents, even a hammer in her car. A chill ran through me. It was like she'd snapped completely. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her son, Ryan. What must it feel like watching your parents spiral like that? To see them fall so far, they started inventing enemies out of thin air. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the silent glow of the streetlights outside. I wasn't scared anymore, just haunted. Haunted by how hate can hollow a person out until there's nothing left but spite. The next morning, there was a knock on my door again, softer this time. When I opened it, Ryan stood there again, eyes red, holding something in his hand, a letter. She's in a facility now," he said quietly. "They said she had a breakdown. I found this in her room before they took her in. She told me to give it to you." I hesitated before taking it. "Did you read it?" He shook his head. "No, she said it was just for you." When he left, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at that envelope for a long while before finally opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her handwriting shaky, uneven. "I wanted to destroy you because you reminded me of everything I'm not. Strong, respected, in control. When I saw that car, it wasn't just envy, it was rage at my own failures. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I never hated you. I hated myself." I set the letter down, heart heavy. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't in months, empathy. People like her don't wake up evil. They become that way slowly, one bitterness at a time. I stepped outside, the morning air cool against my skin. The neighborhood was quiet again, birds chirping, kids laughing somewhere down the street, life moving on. I looked at my car gleaming in the driveway, then back at the letter in my hand. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, But maybe, just maybe, I could let it go, because peace isn't about winning, it's about knowing when to stop fighting. I folded the letter, tucked it into my pocket, and whispered, "Rest easy, Linda, the war's over." Then I turned back to my house, Max following at my heel, and closed the door behind us. What would you do if the person who destroyed your peace came back asking for forgiveness? Could you ever forgive them, or would you carry that wound forever? Because me, I'm still figuring that out. After Linda's breakdown, I thought the story was over for good. She was in a treatment facility, her son had made peace with the neighbors, and the HOA had gone quiet, no fines, no warnings, no tension. For the first time in years, the community actually felt like one. But sometimes peace is just the intermission before the next act. It started one rainy evening. The kind of night where thunder shakes the windows and rain taps like nervous fingers against the glass. I was in my garage polishing the Huracan when I noticed something strange wedged under my windshield wiper, a folded piece of paper. My heart sank instantly. I hadn't seen something like that since the typewriter notes months ago. I slowly opened it, expecting threats or taunts, but instead it read, "They're not who you think they are. The HOA board isn't clean." No name, no address, just that message. I stepped out into the rain, scanning the street, but it was empty. Just flickering streetlights and the echo of thunder rolling across the hills. The next morning, I went to the new HOA president, Mark. He was a good man, calm, reasonable, the complete opposite of Linda. I showed him the note and he frowned. "That's unsettling," he said, "but honestly, I wouldn't take it seriously, probably a prank." Maybe he was right, but something in his tone, the hesitation in his eyes, told me he wasn't as confident as he wanted me to think. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I went through old HOA records, meeting notes, financial reports, even emails that had been forwarded to homeowners. Most of it was the usual bureaucracy, budgets, landscaping discussions, repair quotes. But then I found something odd, a transfer. A large one, nearly $80,000 marked as maintenance improvement, but no record of what it was for or who received it. The date, 2 weeks before Linda was arrested. Now here's where it gets strange. Linda's name was nowhere on the documents, but the signature approving that payment was Mark's. The same man who told me not to worry. The next day, I caught him in front of his house. I didn't want to accuse him, not yet, so I played it cool. "Hey, Mark," I said casually. "You remember any big projects before Linda left? Something that cost 80 grand? He froze for just a second, but it was enough. His eyes flickered with something between fear and annoyance. "I don't handle the financials directly," he said quickly. "Talk to the treasurer." And then he hurried off, muttering something about being late for work. My instinct screamed that something was off. Years in combat teach you to read body language better than any textbook could. That wasn't the reaction of an innocent man. That night, I couldn't shake the thought. What if Linda wasn't completely delusional when she said the HOA was corrupt? What if her obsession with control came from knowing too much and losing her mind trying to expose it? The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I called Ryan. He was hesitant at first, but agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the facility where his mom was staying. When he sat down, I asked him straight out, "Ryan, did your mom ever talk about HOA money, missing funds, anything like that?" His brow furrowed. "Actually, yeah. She used to rant about how the board was stealing money for fake projects. She said she had proof, but no one believed her. I thought it was just paranoia." "Did you ever see the proof?" I asked. He shook his head. "She kept a folder in her office. When she got arrested, the police took everything, said it was evidence, but it never showed up in court." That's when the pieces started fitting together. Linda wasn't just power-hungry, she was covering for someone or trying to expose them. I thanked him and left, my mind racing. The deeper I went, the darker it got. That night I got another message slipped under my front door again, only this time it wasn't typed, it was handwritten. "You're close, stop digging or you'll regret it." That was it, no signature, just a threat. Something in me snapped. The Marine in me, the man who'd seen men try to silence truth through fear, woke up again. The next morning I went straight to the police. I met with Detective Ruiz, the same one who'd handled Linda's vandalism case. I laid it all out, the notes, the missing money, Mark's strange behavior, Linda's obsession with HOA corruption. He sighed, tapping his pen against the desk. "We actually had a complaint from another resident last month, money missing from HOA reserves. You might be onto something." He leaned forward. "If you can get me those financial records you found, we can open an investigation. But keep your head down, all right? Whoever's behind this clearly doesn't like attention." I nodded, knowing exactly what that meant. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every shadow outside, I was on alert. It felt like being back on watch duty overseas. Only this time, the war wasn't in a desert, it was right in my neighborhood. Just before midnight, I heard something outside, a faint metallic clatter. I grabbed my flashlight and quietly opened the front door. At first, I saw nothing. Then the beam caught something glinting in the driveway, a nail, long, thick, sharp. I looked closer, my tires were covered in them. Someone had scattered them across my driveway, every tire on the Huracan slashed clean open. I clenched my jaw, my pulse pounding in my ears. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. They were sending a message, but they picked the wrong guy to intimidate. I looked down that quiet street, rain glistening under the streetlights, and whispered, "You wanted a war, you just found one." Sometimes justice takes patience. Other times it takes resolve. Because this time I wasn't just defending a car, I was defending the truth, and something told me I was about to find out exactly how deep this HOA's secrets went. By the next morning, the anger inside me had hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to let this go. I took photos of the shredded tires, collected the nails in a bag, and drove the truck instead of the Lambo straight to the police station. Detective Ruiz met me in the lobby, his face tightening when he saw the bag. "That's not random vandalism," he muttered. "That's intimidation." He took the evidence, then motioned me into his office. "We ran some checks on those HOA transactions you mentioned," he said, lowering his voice. "You were right. There's something off. We found at least 4 unexplained transfers, totaling nearly $200,000, all labeled as community upgrades that never happened." I leaned forward. "And Mark's signature, on every single one of them." For a second, everything in me went still. Mark, the calm, polite, trustworthy president who'd assured me everything was fine, was knee-deep in fraud. Ruiz sighed. "We're opening a full financial crimes investigation, but Carter, be careful. Once we start pulling at threads like this, people tend to panic, and panicked people make dangerous choices." I nodded. "Let them panic. I've dealt with worse." That night, I parked my truck strategically to block the driveway and replaced my tire cameras with high-definition motion sensors. If they wanted to play dirty, they'd get caught in 4K this time. The neighborhood was unusually quiet that evening. Lights flickered out earlier than usual, dogs barked restlessly, and even the wind seemed to carry tension. I sat on the porch with Max, watching the rain tap against the pavement. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You don't know what you're getting into, walk away." No name, no emoji, just that message. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "Not a chance." For about 20 minutes, nothing, then another ping. "She tried to warn you. You should have let it die with her." My blood ran cold. Whoever it was, they knew about Linda. The next morning, Ruiz called again. "We issued a warrant to seize HOA financials, but before we could serve it, someone broke into the HOA office last night. Computers wiped, hard drives gone, paper files shredded." I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt. They were covering their tracks. Ruiz continued, "We're still tracking the missing money, but whoever's behind this knows what they're doing." That's when I decided I wasn't waiting for justice to come to me. That evening, I went to Mark's house. He was out front watering his lawn, pretending like everything was normal. The sight of him acting so casual made my blood boil. "Evening, Mark," I said, voice steady but low. He looked up, startled. "Oh, hey, Carter, everything okay?" I stepped closer. "You know, it's funny. The police are investigating the HOA for fraud, and somehow every signature on those transfers leads back to you." His hand froze midair. He stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about." I took another step forward, close enough that he could see the storm in my eyes. "You tried to scare me off. You slashed my tires. You left notes. You messed with the wrong person." For a moment, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened and his polite smile vanished. "You don't understand," he hissed. "You should have stayed out of it. None of this was supposed to happen." "Then tell me," I pressed, "what was supposed to happen?" He looked around, his voice dropping. "It wasn't just me. There are others, people on the board, even the contractor who did the road repairs. We had deals, quiet ones. No one was supposed to find out. But when Linda started talking, she became a liability." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You mean?" He cut me off, shaking his head. "She wasn't supposed to get hurt. We just wanted her gone." For a few seconds, all I could hear was the rain hitting the pavement. Then I said quietly, "You ruined her. You drove her to the edge, and now you're covering your own tracks." He stepped back, nervous now. "You don't have proof," he said quickly. "You have nothing." I smiled, not the friendly kind, the kind I used when I knew the fight was already over. "Actually, I have this conversation recorded, every word." His eyes widened. I nodded toward the small black body cam clipped under my jacket. "Old habit from the service, never go into the field unprepared." He froze, then ran, just turned and bolted straight for his car, but I was faster. I stepped in front of him before he reached the door. "You run now, you make it worse," I said. "Turn yourself in." He glared at me, shaking with panic. "You don't know who you're dealing with, Carter." "Neither do you," I said coldly, "but you're about to." That night, I handed the footage straight to Detective Ruiz. By morning, an arrest warrant was issued for Mark and 2 other HOA board members. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The whole neighborhood was buzzing. Police cars parked outside the HOA office, neighbors gathering on lawns whispering about the scandal. When they led Mark out in handcuffs, his eyes found mine through the crowd. He didn't look angry, he looked broken, like a man who finally realized his empire of lies had collapsed. As he passed, he muttered under his breath, "She tried to protect you too, you'll see." Then he was gone. That night I sat in silence, the sound of sirens fading into the distance. I looked at the letter Linda had written months ago, the one where she said she didn't hate me, she hated herself. Maybe she wasn't lying. Maybe she was fighting something bigger than both of us. The truth had come out, but something about Mark's last words wouldn't leave me. She tried to protect you too. What did that mean? Protect me from what? And as I turned off the lights and stared out into the rain-soaked street, I couldn't shake the feeling that this war, the one I thought was finally over, had one more battle left. Because sometimes the real danger isn't the enemies you can see. It's the ones you trusted all along. What would you do if your own neighborhood, the people you waved to every day, were part of something darker than you ever imagined? Would you walk away, or would you keep digging, no matter how dangerous it gets? After Mark's arrest, the neighborhood changed overnight. Patrol cars rolled through every few hours, cameras were installed at every corner, and the once pristine HOA building looked like a crime scene. People whispered in driveways, pointing at my house, calling me the guy who took them down. But I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt uneasy, because Mark's last words haunted me every time I closed my eyes. She tried to protect you too, you'll see. I couldn't let it go. What did Linda know? What did she protect me from? A few days later, Detective Ruiz called me back into the station. He looked tired, like the investigation had been keeping him up for nights. "Carter, we've been going through the seized HOA documents from Mark's house," he said. "We found something you might want to see." He handed me a folder. Inside were a series of scanned letters and memos from when Linda was still president. Most of it was financial chatter, invoices, signatures, routine nonsense. But then one page caught my eye, a memo addressed directly to the developer of the community. It read, "Ray, compensation for the land acquisition deal, the veteran homeowner on Lot 47 has refused the offer. I recommend we apply pressure discreetly until compliance is achieved." Lot 47. That was my property. I froze. "What is this?" Ruiz looked up slowly. "It seems before you moved in, the HOA and the original land developers had a deal. They planned to buy out your property and sell it to a private investor who wanted to build a luxury annex, a golf extension, maybe even a lake expansion. You refused the offer, so they started looking for ways to make you leave." My blood ran cold. "You're saying all of this, the harassment, the vandalism, the constant fines, it wasn't personal, it was planned." "Exactly," Ruiz said. "You were targeted because you stood in the way of a multi-million-dollar land deal. Linda may have started it, but when she tried to back out, the others turned on her too." For a moment, everything blurred. I thought back to every petty complaint, every violation letter, every sideways glare from Linda, and suddenly it all made sense. She wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was a pawn. But then, why the letter? Why the notes that said, "They're not who you think they are"? Maybe she realized too late what she'd helped build. I left the precinct, the folder clutched in my hands, my mind spinning. The rain had started again, washing the streets clean, but inside me there was nothing but fire. That night I drove past the edge of the neighborhood, the construction zone where the developer had once planned their expansion. It was fenced off now, abandoned. But something caught my eye through the rain, a dim light glowing inside one of the trailers. Curiosity, or maybe anger, pulled me in. When I got closer, I saw movement inside. A silhouette pacing. I pulled out my phone, recording as I pushed the door open. Inside was a man in a construction jacket, rifling through a stack of blueprints. He jumped when he saw me. "You can't be here." "Funny," I said, stepping forward. "I could say the same to you." He tried to grab his things and leave, but I blocked the door. "You work for the developer?" He hesitated, then sighed. "I used to, but the project's dead now. The HOA scandal killed it." I glanced at the blueprints. "This was the plan, to bulldoze my property and expand the lake." He didn't answer. His silence was enough. "You all went after me because I didn't sell," I said quietly. "You turned my life into hell because I stood in the way." He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. "It wasn't personal. They told us you were impossible to deal with, that you were dangerous, unstable, that you had anger issues from your service. We believed them." My heart pounded. That's why the HOA and neighbors kept treating me like a problem. Linda had spread rumors, painting me as a ticking time bomb, but she wasn't just being malicious, she was covering the real reason behind it all. "They used her," I said, more to myself than to him. "And when she tried to tell the truth, they destroyed her too." He nodded weakly. "She started to turn on them. She said she had proof, names, dates, everything. A few days later, she was gone. Mental breakdown, they said." I didn't buy it. I stared at him, every muscle in my body tense. "You have that proof?" He hesitated, then reached into a file box and handed me a flash drive. Everything she collected, emails, bank transfers, meeting recordings. I kept it hidden in case someone came asking. I took it, heart hammering. "Why now?" Because I've got nothing left to lose, he said quietly. And because she wasn't the villain they made her out to be. I left that trailer soaked and shaking, but this time not with fear, with clarity. Back home, I plugged in the drive. Files filled the screen, folders labeled evidence, proof, HOA, board, developer deals. I clicked one at random. The first file was a voice recording. Linda's voice filled the room. You can't keep doing this. He's a veteran. He's not some pushover. You start pushing him harder, someone's going to get hurt. Then another voice, Mark's. If he won't leave willingly, we'll make him want to. He doesn't scare me. The audio clicked off, leaving a silence that felt heavier than any firefight I'd ever been in. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, trying to process it all. Linda had tried to stop them. She'd warned them. She'd even warned me in her own broken way. She wasn't the enemy anymore. She was the one who saw the truth before any of us did. The next morning, I handed the flash drive to Detective Ruiz. He didn't say a word, just nodded and shook my hand like he understood the weight of it. That night, I sat outside on the porch, Max lying beside me, watching the sun sink below the rooftops. For the first time, there was no anger, no fear, just quiet understanding. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are also the ones trying hardest to make things right, even if they go about it the wrong way. And maybe that's what Linda meant by protecting me. She didn't just try to keep me from harm, she tried to keep me from the truth. What would you do if the person you hated most turned out to be the one who tried to save you? Would you forgive them, or would the damage run too deep to ever heal? Because for me, forgiveness was starting to feel less like surrender and more like peace. By the time the court date finally arrived, I felt like the entire neighborhood was watching every step I took. News had spread fast, the HOA president who destroyed a veteran's Lamborghini, and everyone was waiting to see how it would end. The morning air felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. I wasn't nervous, I'd faced far worse, but I wanted this over. Not for revenge anymore, but for peace. When I walked into that courtroom, I saw her sitting there at the defendant's table, Linda. Her once perfect hair was disheveled, her confidence gone. She avoided eye contact, pretending to organize her papers like that would somehow erase the fact that she was caught on video destroying something she didn't own. Her lawyer whispered frantically to her, but her hands trembled. My lawyer, a calm and composed man named David, leaned over to me and said softly, "We've got this. Don't react no matter what she says." The judge entered, stern, focused, the kind who could see through lies before they even finished forming. The bailiff called the court to order and the case began. Linda's lawyer started his defense with a shaky voice. "Your Honor, my client acted under emotional distress. She believed the vehicle violated HOA guidelines and was attempting to enforce neighborhood standards." The judge raised an eyebrow. "By keying a car worth $300,000. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. Even her own lawyer sighed before continuing. "She made a poor decision, Your Honor, but she meant no real harm." That's when my lawyer stood up. Calmly, confidently, he said, "Your Honor, we have clear video evidence of Mrs. Thompson intentionally damaging my client's vehicle not once but 3 times. She took it upon herself to vandalize private property because she didn't like how it looked. This isn't emotional distress. This is entitlement." He pressed play on the screen beside the judge. Footage filled the courtroom. Linda glancing around nervously, walking up to the Lamborghini with a key in hand, dragging it across the paint like she was carving her name into it. The metallic screech echoed in the silent courtroom. And then came the second video, the night camera view catching her again under the streetlights, whispering to herself, "He'll learn." Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge's expression hardened. Linda buried her face in her hands, whispering, "That's taken out of context." The judge looked directly at her. "Mrs. Thompson, context doesn't change the fact that you intentionally damaged someone's property. This is not how community disputes are resolved." I just sat there silently watching justice unfold. My lawyer continued, laying out repair invoices, security footage logs, and even a statement from the body shop verifying the damage estimate, $42,000. Then it was her turn to testify. She took the stand, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said softly. "I was under a lot of stress. I thought the HOA would support me. That car, it brought so much attention and people started complaining to me about it. I just snapped." Her voice broke, but there was no remorse, just embarrassment. I stood up when the judge invited me to speak. I didn't want to sound angry. I wanted her and everyone to understand. "Your Honor," I began, "I served this country for nearly 2 decades. I've seen what real destruction looks like. I came home wanting peace, a quiet place to live, and a chance to start over. That car was a dream I worked for, a reminder that I made it home alive. When she destroyed it, she didn't just damage metal and paint. She trampled on something deeply personal." I looked over at her, and she finally met my eyes. For the first time, she didn't look like a villain, just a small, scared person who finally realized what she'd done. The courtroom was silent. The judge nodded slowly, then said, "This court finds the defendant guilty of felony vandalism. Mrs. Thompson, you are ordered to pay full restitution for the damages and a fine of $10,000. You will also perform 200 hours of community service and are hereby removed from your position in the HOA board effective immediately." Linda gasped. Her lawyer closed his eyes, defeated. As we left the courtroom, I felt a strange sense of calm, not triumph, just closure. The cameras outside flashed, reporters asking questions, neighbors whispering. Some clapped when I walked past, others just nodded respectfully. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail from her. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside, she'd written, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I am sorry. I let power and pride blind me. You deserved better from this community. I hope you find peace here." I sat with that for a long while. I didn't reply. Some apologies aren't meant to be answered, they're just meant to be felt. Time passed and the neighborhood changed. The new HOA president, a retired teacher named Mark, was everything Linda wasn't: reasonable, respectful, kind. The first thing he did was personally apologize for what had happened. He even invited me to the next community meeting to share my thoughts on rebuilding trust. I went, not because I wanted control, but because I wanted to remind people what respect means. Standing before the neighbors, I said, "We all want this to be a good place to live, but peace doesn't come from control, it comes from understanding. Let's make sure what happened never happens again." They applauded, and for once I felt at home.